So the first thing that you want to think about is color. What color is it? So it turns out that white, although you can stay cooler in white, it lets in a lot more sunlight than, say, black. And so there have been studies that have looked at white versus blue versus black, and we'll review some of those studies, and we'll get into the details on why color would be important. And then I talk about the 4 W's. So the next one is weight. How much material is being used to make that t-shirt? They're different kind of t-shirts. Some t-shirts have what's known as a larger gauge, and other ones have a smaller gauge, meaning they use more material to make that t-shirt. And the more material that you have, the more the sunlight has to try to get through before it can get to your skin. The next W that I like to talk about is weave. And we just alluded to that in the previous slide. How tightly knit is it? The tighter the knitting, the more protective it is. And it turns out that there are these special clothing lines that are rated for ultraviolet protective factor, UPF clothing. And in those cases, those clothes are knit at a very tight weave so that sunlight is not able to get through as well. And that's how they can get different ultraviolet protective factors into their clothes. The next W is wash. Has it been washed? Again, cotton especially is notorious for being a larger weave, and once you wash it, and especially that dryer, putting it through the dryer and the drying process helps shrink that cotton. So my suggestion to a lot of my patients, especially when they ask about how do I wear sun protective clothing, you know, I'm taking my child out, we're going to be spending the day at an amusement park, or we're going to go out to the beach. I tell them pre-wash the clothing because that's going to really tighten that knitting. And in fact, I tell them don't put them in white. Don't put them in white clothes. Give them a color that's away from white, because it turns out that when you start to, and this is the final W, when you start to wet the clothes with water, say they're at the beach or if they're in the pool and you have a shirt over them, it turns out when you wet clothing, the color matters again. And so white t-shirts, for example, allow a lot more light to pass through than a black t-shirt. And so you have to balance. Sometimes black might not be comfortable to wear because it gets very hot. And so I tell people to pick something in between, something that's like a green or a blue, or perhaps something that's a little bit more darker in the red, but maybe not too dark so it doesn't get too warm.